The most expensive purchase you'll ever make might not be a luxury car, a designer handbag, or a dream house. It might be the desperate need to convince other people that you're doing well. Every single day, millions of people wake up, get dressed, and make financial decisions they believe are smart. They finance expensive SUVs they don't need. They replace perfectly good smartphones every year. They rent luxury apartments that consume half their paycheck. They buy designer clothes on credit. And they stretch their budgets just to maintain an image that looks successful. The strange part is that most of them genuinely believe these choices are helping them build a better life. But what if they're doing the exact opposite? What if the habit of looking rich is quietly keeping people broke, while the habit of looking ordinary is helping someone else become financially free? This isn't about refusing to enjoy your money. It's not about pretending wealth doesn't matter or saying successful people should never buy nice things. It's about understanding one hidden force that influences almost every financial decision we make. The desire to be seen. Because once you understand how that invisible force works, you'll never look at money or wealth the same way again. A few years ago, a young software engineer named Emily accepted what she believed was her dream job at a fast-growing technology company in Austin, Texas. For the first time in her life, she was earning 6 figures. It felt like she had finally made it. Within weeks of receiving her first few paychecks, everything around her began to change. She traded in the reliable compact SUV that had gotten her through college for a brand new Tesla Model Y. She upgraded from a modest apartment to a luxury high-rise with a rooftop pool, a private fitness center, and breathtaking city views. Her closet slowly filled with designer brands. Weekend trips became luxury getaways. Even ordinary coffee runs turned into carefully curated Instagram stories. From the outside, Emily looked exactly like someone who had become wealthy. Friends congratulated her. Family members admired how quickly she had succeeded. Coworkers assumed she must be excellent with money. There was just one problem. Almost none of it actually belonged to her. The Tesla came with years of monthly payments. The apartment absorbed a huge percentage of every paycheck. Most of her lifestyle upgrades were financed with money she hadn't earned yet. By the end of every month, despite making more money than she had ever imagined, her checking account was nearly empty. Then something unexpected happened. A new senior project manager joined her department. Her name was Rachel. Rachel had spent nearly 20 years in the tech industry. She drove an older Toyota RAV4, one of those well-maintained models from several years ago that still looked modern, reliable, and perfectly respectable. She carried the same simple leather tote to work almost every day. She wore clean, timeless clothes instead of expensive designer labels. She packed her lunch most afternoons. Nothing about Rachel looked flashy. Nothing about her screamed success. If you passed her in a grocery store, you probably wouldn't give her a second look. One afternoon, during lunch, the conversation shifted toward cars. Someone jokingly asked Rachel why she still drove an older RAV4 when she could clearly afford something much nicer. Rachel smiled. "I could buy almost any car I want." She paused. "But I'd rather buy my freedom." The table went quiet. Everyone assumed she was exaggerating. She wasn't. Over the following months, Emily slowly discovered something that completely changed the way she thought about money. Rachel owned her home outright. She had no car payment. Her retirement accounts had been growing for nearly 2 decades. She owned a diversified portfolio of index funds and rental investments that generated income whether she was working or not. Quietly, without attracting attention, she had built a net worth several $1,000,000. The woman who looked the most ordinary in the office was by far the wealthiest person there. That discovery planted a question in Emily's mind that she couldn't stop thinking about. Why do so many people spend their money trying to look wealthy, while so many people who are actually wealthy seem perfectly comfortable looking ordinary? The answer has very little to do with income, and almost everything to do with psychology. Because the battle between looking rich and becoming rich doesn't begin in your bank account. It begins in your mind. The question stayed with Emily longer than she expected, not because Rachel had more money, but because Rachel didn't seem to need to prove it. And that idea quietly unsettled everything Emily thought she understood about success. Because if wealth wasn't meant to be displayed, then why did it feel so natural to display it? Why did upgrading her lifestyle feel like progress, even when her savings were shrinking? The answer sits deep inside behavioral psychology. Human beings are not naturally wired to optimize for long-term wealth. We are wired to optimize for social status. For most of human history, survival depended on how we were perceived by the group. Being respected, admired, or envied often meant access to resources, protection, and opportunity. In that environment, signaling success was not vanity, it was survival strategy. But modern life changed the rules faster than the brain could adapt. Today, status is no longer required for survival. Yet the instinct to display status never disappeared. It just evolved into something more expensive. A new car is no longer just transportation. A designer outfit is no longer just clothing. A luxury apartment is no longer just shelter. They have become signals. And signals are powerful because they speak faster than words. This is where something economists call conspicuous consumption comes in. The act of buying visible goods specifically to display wealth rather than to maximize utility. The economist Thorstein Veblen first described this over a century ago, but in the modern world, it has accelerated dramatically through social media. Because now, people are not just comparing themselves to neighbors, they are comparing themselves to millions of curated lives online. Every scroll becomes a silent financial pressure test. Someone is traveling, someone is upgrading their home, someone is unboxing something new. And even if we consciously know it's curated, the subconscious part of the brain doesn't fully separate reality from performance. It just registers one message. You are behind. This is where lifestyle inflation begins. Not when income increases, but when identity fails to stabilize. When Emily got her raise, her brain didn't interpret it as more money to invest. It interpreted it as new level of identity to match. New income became new permission, and that permission quickly turned into obligation. Because once you step into a higher lifestyle, it becomes psychologically expensive to step back down. This is one of the most underestimated traps in personal finance. People assume the danger is debt, but the deeper danger is identity commitment. A $700 car payment is not just a monthly expense. It becomes part of how someone sees themselves. I am someone who drives this kind of car. A luxury apartment is not just rent. It becomes a statement. This is the level I belong to now. And once identity locks in, behavior follows automatically. This is why financial stress often doesn't feel like math. It feels like pressure. Because the real conflict is not between income and expenses. It is between image and reality. An image is expensive to maintain. But here is where the contrast becomes sharper. Rachel wasn't immune to status pressure. She simply redirected it. Instead of using money to signal wealth, she used money to buy independence from signaling altogether. That distinction is subtle but powerful. Because there are only two ways to use money in a status-driven environment. You either spend it to look successful, or you delay spending it so you can become financially untouchable. Most people unconsciously choose the first path, because it gives immediate emotional reward. When Emily upgraded her apartment, she didn't just get a better view. She got validation. She felt like she had arrived. And that feeling is addictive. Neuroscience research shows that anticipation and reward cycles triggered by status gains activate dopamine pathways in the brain, similar to other reinforcing behaviors. In simpler terms, financial decisions tied to image don't feel like budgeting decisions. They feel like emotional upgrades. But the cost is invisible at first. It shows up later in the form of reduced flexibility, fewer options, delayed investments, and long-term dependency on continued high income. Rachel's approach flipped that entire system. Every financial decision she made reduced dependency instead of increasing appearance. Her older car wasn't a sacrifice. It was a buffer. Her modest lifestyle wasn't lack of ambition. It was insulation from pressure. And over time, those choices compounded in a way most people never notice until it's too late. Because wealth is not built in big moments. It is built in small decisions that quietly determine how much freedom you keep from your income. This is the part most financial advice misses. It focuses on how to make more money, but not how to resist upgrading your life every time you do. And that resistance is where real wealth begins. The uncomfortable truth is that most people don't fail at building wealth because they don't earn enough. They fail because every increase in income quietly resets what they believe they should be spending. And once that reset happens often enough, financial progress becomes an illusion. From the outside, life looks upgraded. Better car, better apartment, better clothes, better lifestyle. But underneath it, nothing actually accumulates. No real ownership. No meaningful investments. No buffer between income and survival. Just a more expensive version of the same financial vulnerability. Emily started noticing this pattern in her own life more clearly after her conversations with Rachel. At first, she tried to justify it. She told herself that enjoying her money was part of working hard, that she deserved comfort after long hours, that everyone upgrades their life when they move forward. And none of that was entirely wrong, but something deeper still didn't add up. Because despite earning more than she ever had before, she didn't feel more secure. She felt more dependent. That's when Rachel said something that stayed with her. "You can tell who is building wealth," she said, "not by what they show you, but by what they are willing to ignore." Ignore is the key word. Because building wealth in a modern economy is not just about knowledge. It is about resistance. Resistance to comparison. Resistance to lifestyle pressure. Resistance to the quiet voice that says, "You've earned this upgrade." This is where the philosophy of looking poor becomes misunderstood. It is not about being careless. It is not about rejecting quality of life. And it is definitely not about pretending money doesn't matter. It is about breaking the link between income and appearance. Because once that link breaks, financial control becomes possible. Here is the practical framework that separates people like Emily at the beginning of her journey from people like Rachel. It comes down to a simple rule. When your income increases, your lifestyle does not immediately follow it. Instead, your assets do. Most people do the opposite. Income goes up, lifestyle upgrades immediately. But wealth builders delay lifestyle changes and redirect excess income into assets that produce future income. Index funds, retirement accounts, cash reserves, real estate equity, business investments, not for excitement, but for insulation. Because insulation is what creates optionality. And optionality is what most people mistake for freedom. The real shift happens when you understand this. Freedom is not how much you earn. Freedom is how long you can survive without earning. Rachel wasn't wealthy because she avoided spending. She was wealthy because her life didn't require constant income to maintain. That is a completely different financial structure. And once Emily understood that, she began to see her own situation differently. Her Tesla wasn't just a car payment. It was monthly dependency. Her apartment wasn't just rent. It was a fixed obligation that demanded continuous high performance at work. Her lifestyle wasn't just comfort. It was pressure disguised as success. So she started making changes. Not dramatic ones. Not overnight transformations. But small structural shifts. She stopped upgrading things that still worked. She redirected her raise into automated investments before she could emotionally adjust to having extra money. She built a 3-month emergency buffer, then 6 months. She reduced fixed expenses that didn't improve long-term stability. And slowly, something unexpected happened. Her financial anxiety didn't just decrease, it changed shape entirely. Because when you remove the pressure to maintain appearances, money stops feeling like something you constantly need more of. It starts feeling like something you are building. This is the part most people never reach. They stay stuck in the cycle of earning and upgrading, never realizing that each upgrade increases the cost of their own life. But the wealthiest individuals are operating under a completely different logic. They are not trying to maximize status. They are trying to maximize independence. And independence is quiet. It doesn't advertise itself. It doesn't need attention. It often looks ordinary on purpose, not because it lacks ambition, but because it has already removed the need for approval. So when people say, "Why look poor is important," the real meaning is not about appearance at all. It is about freedom from financial performance. Because the moment you stop spending money to convince others, you start using it to convince reality. And reality is the only audience that matters in the long run. In the end, Emily didn't become wealthy because she earned more. She became wealthy when she stopped allowing her income to define her identity. And that is the shift most people never see coming. Not a change in salary, not a change in job, but a change in perception. Because once you understand that looking rich is a cost, you finally understand why some of the wealthiest people in the world don't look like it at all.